delight to be with you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you. Please, thank you. Thank you so much. Look, as you spoke, I could almost hear the press salivating. Will Joe be Joe today? I make no apologies whatsoever. None. And I want to say to my host, my introducer, you know, don't move that thing. I got to talk about what I'm going to talk about, okay? So just hold still, guys, all right? I got to say that I'm flattered that he ascribes so much to my just saying what was true and what the American people had already decided. And I want you to know that, to set the record straight, that my comments on Meet the Press were not planned, but what was planned and understood is when I get asked a direct question, I give a direct answer. No, wait a minute. I come out of the civil rights movement, and there's not a way in God's green earth that I could sit there and be asked a question about the civil rights issue of our day and remain silent. It would have made a lie of who I am. Secondly, I want you to know, I know the president fully agreed with me. There's a tactical difference possibly within the White House as to how and when. But, you know, enough is enough. When I walked in after making that assertion, and the president just got up and gave me a big hug, and he said to me, you'd said two things that you weren't going to change if I brought you on. One was you weren't going to wear any funny hats, and two, you weren't going to change your brand. Folks, there is the thing I love about you all, and I mean this, is your passion. And the thing I love about my host is, as I whispered in his ear, you know, I get this credit from the LGBT community for moving things along. But the credit really goes to the community. And here's what I mean by that. As more and more people had the courage, and it took courage, sometimes physical courage, to come out, average Americans began to understand who you were, that you were no different, that you're the same assets, liabilities, talents, lack of talent as every other American. I mean this sincerely. And what I said to him was, I didn't free the LGBT community. What y'all did, what they did, was free every straight woman and straight man in this country. They freed us. And let me explain what I mean by that. And I mean this sincerely. I hadn't planned on saying it, but let me say what I mean here. This is the deal. It used to be that the vast majority of the American people who were not at all homophobic felt intimidated if they spoke up, felt intimidated if they were in a circumstance where someone made fun of or, in fact, was demeaning to someone else who was part of the community. But today, what's happened? So many decent straight people who were just as afraid to speak out in support now have been given their voice by the gay community. It's made America better all across the board. So I say thank you to the gay and lesbian community. I mean that sincerely. Folks, before I begin the substance of what I came to talk to you about, I want to begin by explaining very briefly why I've been late. I have been engaged with our national security team and on the phone with President Poroshenko of Ukraine, and in dealing with a very tragic circumstance that you've probably already heard about, which is that an aircraft, a Malaysian aircraft, heading from Western Europe to Kuala Lumpur, as it crossed or was near the border of Ukraine and Russia, apparently, I say apparently because I don't have the actual, we don't have all the detail yet. I want to be sure of what I say. Apparently, have been shot down. Shot down, not an accident, blown out of the sky. We've seen reports that there may have been American citizens on board, and obviously that's our first concern. And we're now working every minute to try to confirm those reports as I speak. This is truly a grave situation. Nearly 300 souls have been lost. The families need consolation and our prayers. And there are many questions that need to be answered. And we'll get those answers, and we will take the next steps accordingly. We're in touch with the Ukrainian government. As I said, I was on the phone for the better part of a half an hour with President Poroshenko. I've spoken with our president, I've been in contact with our president as well as our national security team. I offered President Poroshenko the help of our expertise, our National Transportation and Safety Group and other experts in the community. He accepted that help, and they will be on their way rapidly to see if we can get to the bottom of this. And I know you join me in sharing our thoughts and prayers with the families of all the passengers wherever they call home. And it's important we get to the bottom of this sooner or later because of the possible repercussions that can flow from this beyond the tragic loss of life. And so that's why I was late, and I apologize for it. But my heart goes out to those families. And Arshad, I want to thank you again for your introduction. And I also got to meet Raven and Adam of Netroots Nation. And I want to thank the people of Detroit for hosting you and me. I was just with the mayor. Just as the mayor of this great city, and it is coming back. It will come back, and you're going to be part of the reason why it comes back, I might add. You know, but most of all, I'm happy to be here with you. You know, I've learned an important lesson a long time ago in my career, that showing up is half the battle. So I want to thank you for showing up, for always showing up. Since well before we came into office, you've been showing up, and you've never left. Your passion has been the fuel that has energized everything we have done and continue to try to do. You helped us debunk the central premise of our opponents, that progressive government is the cause of our demise rather than the source of our solutions. You have done that with us. Because of you, the law is now established. I remember the first time I ran as a 29-year-old kid, being branded a socialist in the state of Delaware because I argued that health care was a right, not a privilege. You made that happen. You made that happen. It is monumental. It is not a privilege. It's a basic human right. Because of you, we've recognized basic and fundamental rights of equality in the LGBT community. Not what I said, what you followed on, what you argued, what you insisted on. And because of you, you gave me so much help in administering the Recovery Act that we literally saved this country from moving from a great recession into a depression. And we established, because of your help, that progressive government did and does have a role in the economic health and well-being of the American people. So thank you, thank you, thank you. The point is that you and Biden says was on his mind. It's about passion. It's about believing what you say. There's no reason to be in this business. There is no reason to be in this business unless you know what you believe and you're willing to risk what you believe. We share a commitment to the values, you, me, the President, and many other people, including Senator Warren, who you're going to hear tomorrow. She's first rate. She's a solid person. We share a commitment to the values that made this country exceptional, and they're not confusing. I've traveled about 1 million miles now. I've met almost in the last 35 years, every major world leader. And when I get asked the question, what makes America so different, so exceptional? It's basic. It's a sense of fairness, a sense of justice, and a sense and a notion that equality, everyone is entitled to equality and be treated with dignity. And what I value most about you is your deep passion, driven by the concern for others as opposed to your self-interest. That's what distinguishes all of you. It's about others, not about you. Now, I don't want the press thinking I'm in here thinking you're all wonderful. Probably some of you are horses' tails, like some of the people I work with. Probably some of you aren't so personally generous. I get it. I'm not trying to be cute with you, but I mean what I say. You are among a group of people, the most influential group of people, who are doing what you do because you care. You care about somebody else beyond yourselves. Some of you may have heard that I spoke yesterday to about 1,000 young people, and I talked about how Vice President Cheney recently said that we should be spending our money on the military, not on food stamps and highways. Now look, I don't take a back seat to anyone when it comes to defending this nation or taking care of our troops. I've been in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan 27 times. I've been up in FOBs. I've been up in the Konar Valley. My helicopters. Take a back seat to no one. My son spent a year in Iraq volunteering. The Attorney General of Delaware won the Bronze Star. I take a back seat to no one and no one in my family. But that doesn't mean that I don't believe it's just as important to feed our people as it is to fund our military. I do. Do I believe it's as important to invest in our infrastructure, the arteries that make possible our economy to flow? Yeah, I do. Do I believe it's time for our combat troops not only to come home from Iraq, which they have, but come home from Afghanistan now? Yes, I do. And I fought for it. So have you. And you look how far we've come with your help. We've ended the war in Iraq. We are ending the war in Afghanistan. And with your help, we were able to negotiate. I got stuck with, it's always like, there used to be a commercial back when I was your age that was about Life cereal. And there's 3 kids sitting at the kitchen table and 2 older boys, and they're looking at the cereal and said, "What's that?" I said, "Mom and Dad eat it." Well, I don't know. What's it taste like? I don't know. And they said, "Well, Mikey will eat it." Okay? And they point to Mikey. Well, I'm always Mikey when it comes to negotiating with the House and Senate. They send Mikey out. But I want to tell you, we got a long way to go to make the tax code fair. But for the first time in 20 years, Republicans voted to raise taxes on the top 1%. The first time, the top 2%. And I continue to believe that closing loopholes like earned income tax credit, the carried interest, and all the other loopholes, over $600 billion of them, that the wealthy take advantage of, they don't need and does not add to productivity. That should continue to be our target, not to go after the wealthy, but to make sure everybody's in the deal, everybody pays their fair share. And what all of this has made me think of is a basic question that I think we need to answer, and you're in the process of answering it as well. What are our priorities? What is most important to us? What do we care about most? What is it that will make America more fair, just, and prosperous, not just for some? If everything is equally important to you, then nothing is important to you. If everything is equally important to you, then nothing is important to you. So we have to straightforwardly state, without apology, what we are for and why. And I believe that we are at an inflection point. We probably reached this point in our history 3 or 4 times. Remember your physics class when you're in school? I remember my physics professor saying an inflection point is you're riding down the highway at 60 miles an hour and you sharply turn the wheel 10 to 12 degrees in one direction. You can never get back on the path you were on. That's an inflection point where things change in a significant way. We are at an inflection point in national and world history. Things are going to change unrelated to Barack Obama and Joe Biden or even you. They're going to change because the world has changed. To quote Yeats, all's changed, changed utterly. A terrible beauty has been born. What are we going to do? Our hands are on the wheel, and this is one of those moments that few times in our history people get a chance to actually bend history a little bit, just a little bit. And there are fundamental changes taking place in the world and at home. And ladies and gentlemen, we have to be clear. We have to be crystal clear on what are the fundamental organizing principles we think this democracy rests upon, and fight like hell to make sure they are sustained and maintained, because it's on those organizing principles that we're able to potentially build a much better, fairer nation. And let me tell you what I think those organizing principles are. First and foremost, I believe in a nation that stands for equal rights for all Americans. That includes the right to choose. It includes, it includes the right to marry whomever you love. It includes the right of everybody in the LGBT community to be treated equally in every respect. That's why we have to pass ENDA. We have to pass it now. I know there's differences on the detail of it, but no one should ever have a right to dismiss somebody because of their sexual orientation. It just should not exist. It also includes the basic proposition that my daughter and my 4 granddaughters are guaranteed every single opportunity my sons and grandsons have, because they are capable of whatever my sons and grandsons can do. I mean everything. Without exception. I am determined. I believe, and I've spent my career ensuring that one of the primary measures of how we conclude and will be judged as a people is how we deal with the abuse of power, whether it's psychological, economic, or physical power. The abuse of power, as my father would say, is the worst sin that can be committed. And the cardinal sin among all of those is for a man to raise his hand to a woman for whatever reason. No man has a right to raise a hand to a woman under any circumstances other than self-defense, period. Some of you may not agree with that, but no circumstance, none. And that's why have moved this debate from writing that law to focusing on sexual assault on campuses. It is outrageous. It is outrageous. And to all you men in the audience, and every man listening to me here, every single man listening to me, you have a right, an obligation to... Let's take these one issue at a time, okay? I respect your view and I share your view, but let me take these issues one... We should clap for those young people, because if you were a member of a family, we should clap for them. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the pain, the anxiety of coming home every day wondering whether or not your mother or father will still be there? Can you imagine? Can you imagine what it must feel like? Ladies and gentlemen, there's so much unfinished business. But I believe in a nation that understands that the most precious right Americans possess is the unfettered access to the ballot box. Now listen to me, because I mean this sincerely. It is not as sexy. It is not as immediately heart-wrenching, but it is the basis upon which we'll be able to deal with the concern of those young people and everything else I mentioned. It's the basis upon which every single other right rests. I started my career as a young man in the civil rights movement. No big deal, just a kid desegregating movie theaters and facilities in my state of Delaware, which has the 8th largest black population in America. The fact of the matter is that without the right to vote, and you know, we fought for the Voting Rights Act. I was a kid. What happened at Pettus Bridge, what happened during the entire movement, and the passage of the legislation, I thought, and then I became chairman of the Judiciary Committee. And I fought for the constant re-extension of the Voting Rights Act. The last time it passed 99-0, and I thought, finally the principle's established. I never thought I'd be standing here in the year 2014 when over, I believe it's 65 pieces of legislation have been introduced in state legislative bodies to curtail, to diminish, to shorten the time within which to demand more proof that you're able to vote. I thought we were beyond that point. This is a fight that I know is not on the top of everyone's agenda, but we can not lose. These guys mean it. They haven't gone away. And folks, the fact of the matter is that I believe we are a nation that is, well, I'll put it another way. There is climate change. There is climate change. It's real. And the reason why passion is warranted is because it is the single greatest challenge to humanity that exists today. It is not only a moral obligation, it literally, in a literal sense, if we do not gain control of it, it's going to mortgage not just the next generation, but humanity. And I believe that we're a nation of immigrants. The constant flow of immigration from our founding of our country has been the primary source of our ability to constantly remake ourselves as a nation. I met with Lee Kuan Yew on my way from Mumbai to Japan, to Tokyo, and then off to Beijing. And he's 94 years old, referred to as the Henry Kissinger of the Orient. And I asked him, and he's written extensively and spoken extensively on the future of India, China, the United States, and Russia. And I said to him midway through the conversation, because I've known Xi more than most know him because I've spent so much time with him, I said, what's China doing right now? And he's 94 in frail health, but in sharp mind. And he speaks perfect English. He looked at me and said, Mr. Vice President, China is in the United States right now looking for the buried black box. I looked at him quizzically like you all are looking at me. And I said, Mr. President, what do you mean? He said, that box that contains the secret that allows America to be the only country in the world that is constantly able to remake itself. I said, Mr. President, I'm old enough now to presume to give you an answer what's in that black box. Number one, naturalized or native born, stamped into the DNA of every American citizen, is a healthy skepticism for orthodoxy. Think about it. I'm not joking. Think about that proposition, including our great allies. No child in school ever gets in trouble for challenging orthodoxy. It's the reason why we've been able to remake things. Secondly, I said, Mr. President, in that black box, they'll find a constant stream of immigration, not just trickles, major flows of immigration. Because think about it, folks. Even those of you who are not crazy about the flow of immigration, think about it. What does it take to one day sit in your yard or your table and look at one another and say, you know, I've got a great idea. Let's leave everything we know and are comfortable with and move to a country that probably doesn't want us, where we don't speak the language, and we have no idea what the future holds. It's almost a Darwinian self-selection process. The people who have the courage to move are the people with the courage, the people with hope, the people with the sense of optimism, the people who think there are possibilities. They're the people who, by and large, come from every continent in the world. And they fuel America's dynamism. They are not the problem. They fuel America's dynamism. So, folks, every country has to control its borders, and we need a rational policy. But the notion that is a problem. Look at the problems other countries are having now. I got in trouble, you may recall, for speaking my mind, saying that China could not sustain a one-China policy and they would change it. They changed it. Was I clairvoyant? No. It's a simple proposition. They do not welcome outsiders. It is, some would suggest it's a xenophobic society. At a minimum, it's not one that welcomes permanent change. So what's the problem now? They don't have enough people to work to support the people who no longer work. So they're changing the one China policy. Japan. What is Japan doing? It's changing its policy so that instead of not just educating women and then discouraging them for staying in the workforce, they're now doing everything possible to keep women in the workforce. Why? They are not overwhelmingly excited about large new immigration, so they're trying very hard to change the policy. I believe every American is entitled to a fair shot at a good job. You know, my dad used to say when he lost his job and got one and did well, he said, Joey, a job is about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about respect. It's about your place in the community. And most importantly, it's about your dignity. That's why I believe a nation that values earned income as much as unearned income, and a tax system that's fair and equitable. Because I believe that real job creators in America are the engineers, the salespeople, the line workers, not just the investment bankers and the shareholders. Everyone's entitled to be treated with dignity and the contributions they make. And what I know and believe in is the basic bargain that used to exist with Democrats and Republicans for the previous 6 decades. And it was this: if you contributed to the success and productivity of the enterprise or business, you got to share in a commensurate way in the success that flowed from that. It's not only fair and good for American workers, it's good for companies. It's good for the enterprise. But it has been broken, that bargain. It has been broken. We're the most productive workers in the world. Yet, they are not sharing in that productivity. You know, all you have to do is go back to this town 100 years ago with a guy named Henry Ford. There was no more sharp-edged businessman in America at the time than Henry Ford. 100 years ago, in a moment of economic difficulty at home, what did he do? He doubled the pay of his workers. Now, let me tell you why. It wasn't an altruistic undertaking, although it may have been. What it really was about is he understood basic economics. He understood it was good for business. It boosted productivity, it reduced turnover, it created loyalty and prosperity that allowed his workers then to go out and buy Ford automobiles. His profits soared and sales went up after he doubled their salary. He understood that when people get paid more, the economy grows, more products get bought, the rich get richer, the middle class grows, and the poor have a vision for a way up. But that bargain's broken today. And restoring that bargain, I can say without fear of contradiction, is the President and my highest priority, the single most significant thing we can do. For folks, when the middle class begins to shrink, when the middle class loses its faith in the equity of the system, something else at stake. It's not just their standard of living. The middle class and the notion of the possibilities that exist is the glue that has allowed us to be the most stable political and most stable social system in the world. When that begins to fray, much more will fray than loss of economic opportunity. There's another thing I know, that when we act as one America, when we view ourselves as one America, there are the times throughout our history when we've succeeded. And that means that folks at the top have a responsibility not only to their shareholders, not only to their company, but to their community, their employees, not only to their industry, but to their country. And there's a clear, tried and true way to make sure that this happens. And that is when everybody takes on their responsibility. When middle-class folks know that if they work hard, they get cut into the deal, not cut out. When the folks at the bottom know that if they try, they'll get a chance to climb the ladder of the middle class. If you stop and think about it, and you're all extremely educated people, what is it about America? What's been the promise of America? I would argue the fundamental promise of America has been this notion of upward mobility. Upward mobility. And unlike any time, according to the sociologists, in recent history, that upward mobility has been stalled. And when it stalls, a lot of other things stall. Now, like you, I make no apologies for my passion. Like you, I make no apology for saying what I believe. And I don't take a backseat to anyone when it comes to fighting some of the toughest progressive battles the country has seen. I entered public life out of civil rights movement. I ran as a 29-year-old kid for women's equality and ending the war in Vietnam because I thought it was a serious mistake. I led the fight against the polarization of the Supreme Court, stopping Bork, trying to stop Thomas, Alito, and Roberts. I fought, I fought for the right of privacy. Every year when I was a senator, I was labeled one of the 4 libertarians in the Senate in terms of civil liberties. I fought for the right to choose, the right of every American to have health insurance. I both won and lost significant fights about rational gun policy and rational campaign financing, neither of which exists today in our country. But folks, there's also one more thing I know, that in a country as big and diverse as we are, and we're growing more diverse, raising the specter that more wedge issues will be introduced and more seeds of division planted because we are different. How do you define an American? I challenge you to define an American other than a commitment to principles. It's not religion. It can't be on race. It can't be on culture, ethnicity. Within 3 years, those of us American Caucasian of European descent will be in a minority in America. That's not bad. It's neither bad nor good. It's just, it shows how diverse we've become. So in a nation, a democracy as heterogeneous as ours, it can only function and deliver results, progressive results, if we arrive at consensus. It is impossible to run this country absent consensus. Consensus is a necessary element to achieve a progressive society. But our politics have gotten so corrosive, so cynical, so personal, so unattractive. For the time being, it makes consensus virtually impossible. And we've got to change it. To change it, not to be nice to the other guy, but so we can succeed. Change it in order to succeed in our priorities, our progressive agenda. The American people are sick and tired of the way in which American politics is conducted today. And we need to resist the urge to respond in kind. Not for moral reasons, for 2 basic practical reasons. When we respond in kind, it prevents our message from being heard by the American people. They just turn it off. And secondly, it allows our opponents to change the subject and not debate the essence of the issues we care so deeply about. There's a reason for that, folks. Because the opposition knows that the American people agree with us on every major issue. Minimum wage, marriage equality, immigration reform, equal pay for women. I go down the list. Look at every poll. But the best way for those who oppose our progressive views to succeed is to convince the American people that we're all the same, that it doesn't matter. We're all venal. Washington can't function. And who are the people who walk away when they're convinced that that is a truism? The people who need us the most. The people we care about the most. The elite don't walk away because they understand the consequence of government. So folks, we can rise to what the American people demand and what our country needs at the same time. I realize very few people agree with me on this, but we can debate without being demeaning. We should not hesitate for a moment to question repeatedly the flawed judgment of our opponents without having any necessity to question their motives. We can make sure we are heard and still demonstrate we're willing to listen to the other side. It's time for our politics to become as big and as grand and as noble as the American people are. People talk about America being divided. The American people aren't divided. Politics has divided America. The American political system has divided America. They are not inherently divided. For today, the reason why it's so important at this moment is America's on the precipice of a monumental and consequential change at home and around the world. There is so many opportunities to make this country and the world better. And our message to the American people should be about expanding dreams and ambitions, not downsizing them, because these possibilities are real. I'm more optimistic today, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, about the prospects for this country and our people and the world than I was when I was a 29-year-old kid, the young idealist getting elected. Because I know the history of the journey of this country. My optimism is based on the decency and grit of the American people. My optimism is based on people like you who are in the fight. Imagine a country where we're generating phenomenal breakthroughs in renewable energy, where you can plug in a vehicle and go 300 miles, filling up on electrons cheaper than gas, solar energy cheaper than natural gas or coal. It's within our power. Imagine a country where marriage equality is a given and where the perpetrators of domestic violence are treated by pariahs and it's no longer talked about as being domestic and somehow a family matter. Imagine how that changes things. It's within our power. Imagine where not a single employer has a right to fire anyone because of their sexual orientation. Imagine, it's all within our reach. Imagine fighting for climate change instead of hiding behind indifference. Imagine a country where once again we value work and reward it in a commensurate way, where middle-class people are growing and expanding. Imagine a country where we invest as much in medical research as we do in non-productive tax loopholes. Imagine a country where we lead not just by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. Ladies and gentlemen, I not only imagine it, I believe it. And I've been around a long time. They refer to me as the White House optimist, like I'm the guy that just, my grandpa would say, fell off the turnip truck yesterday. I've been around longer than all of them. And by the way, I know we can do this. We can make it happen. Do not be discouraged. Do not be discouraged by what the last 8 years have delivered. We've been through these periods before. I remember just in my career in the Senate, NICPAC, the Christian Coalition, I go on, all those things that were going to last forever, remember? Remember? Folks, your energy and passion has been and will continue to be the force that drives this debate. You prove that the American people are always ahead of their elected officials. And think, I'm not just trying to be nice to the population. Think about it. They've always been ahead in civil rights, in the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s. The American people were beyond where their congressional and presidential leadership was. Look at what just happened. The American people are way beyond where their elected officials were on marriage equality. I could go on and on and on. So I'm here to say just one simple thing. We need you. I need you. The country needs you. We've come a long way together. We have a lot further to go to get home. So let me close by saying that the history of the journey of this great country has always been forward, fueled by optimism, commitment, that's unleashed passion for the values that make this country exceptional, where there is a consensus among the American people. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said to the Chinese leader after we were downgraded, our economic standing, and I went over and I stood in the Great Hall of the People, and was then President Xi, and they were being very gracious. They said, "Oh, we don't think it's over for America. We think you'll come back. We think you'll make it." And went on. And I came time to speak, and I said, "You know, Mr. President, you're being criticized for buying all those American bonds after, Treasury bills, after we were downgraded. I know you're being criticized. If I were you, I wouldn't buy anymore." And the economic team was with me, nearly had a cat. And I said, because, and I mean this sincerely, I said, because it's true you own 2% of our financial instruments, but the American people own the vast bulk of this. And we've never reneged on a debt. So thank you, but you don't have to take a risk with us. And the second thing I said, and I say to you, and it's the last comment I'll make, believe in the American people. I know you're all really well educated, and there's a tendency among the highly educated, sophisticated population, Democrats and Republicans, to somehow think ordinary people, ordinary citizens, high school educated people, hardworking people, somehow they don't know what's in their own interest. Resist being so condescending. They're smarter than you are collectively. No. They know what their interest is. They can't articulate it the same way, but they know. So folks, my closing comment is, never bet against America. It has never been a good bet. Thank God we have you. Keep it going. Thanks for having me. See you.